Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm just going to give it a few more seconds for people to join. Feel free to grab yourself a drink, get comfortable.
Viv, how are you? How wonderful to see you after 20 years. Dave Green sends you his best wishes. I was with him the other day and great stuff. Fantastic.
Fabulous. I feel like this is going to be a reunion of sorts, isn't it? So many people that have decided to join today, which is incredible. We'll let a couple more people in and then I'll introduce us formally. I think while we're waiting, another 30 seconds before I start formally, while we're waiting, I'll do a little wee bit of housekeeping just to keep everybody up to date. So feel free to have your cameras on. It'd be lovely to see your wonderful faces, but equally, it's not necessary. You can keep your cameras off if that feels better. If you are in stealth mode and multitasking, I'd advise keep your camera off just because for this benefit of the speakers, because if you're in the middle of a Zumba class or having a big row with somebody, it can be really distracting. So just be mindful and that would be much appreciated. Microphones, you will all have had my email, so microphones are going to be off for the duration, if that's okay with everybody. We've got quite a lot to pack in a relatively short amount of time, so we're not going to be able to have any hands up or take any questions during sort of the main bulk of the session. But feel free to hop in the chat because it would be great to have some interaction in the chat, and we've allocated some time a little bit later, around about 20 minutes at the end, for some questions and answers. So that would be really good. Feel free to give us a high five or wave. That would be most welcome. But we won't be able to have any hands up. There we go. Pete's coming in as well. Everyone's on it with the waiting room. Fantastic. A couple more people just waiting to come in there. Okay. Right, everybody's aware that we're recording as well. You'll have had that note when you came in. I will be sending out the link, hopefully later on this week, tech allowing, with all of the contact details and anything that's shared. I know lots of you are here joining live, which is we're really, really grateful for, because we recognise that everybody's time is so precious and everybody's schedules are, shall we say, frazzled and flustered at the moment, particularly given the topic of conversation today. So we really are mindful of that. I'm really grateful for those of you that are able to join us live. I know a lot of people have registered that can't make it live because they're teachers and they are therefore teaching at this time. So we will be sending the link out, and I just want to welcome you guys that are watching back the recording. Your input will be massively valuable as well, and we'll make sure you have all the links and all of the content that we share today. Okay, so I'm going to introduce myself formally in a couple of minutes, but I just want to let you know the format of the session, how things are going to go, just to manage expectations, so you know how things are going to run. So I'm going to do a little reintroduction about myself and my background. Then the bulk of this hour is going to be taken up with our amazing speakers. So a collection of professionals from the education sector are going to be speaking about their journey and some of the work that we're starting to co-produce and work on collectively. Then we're going to have a little bit of time at the end, about 20 minutes for Q&A, and I'm going to be furiously managing the chat box so we can bring that out to the panel. If you know who you want to direct your question to, if it's for somebody specific that you've heard speak, just mention that for me so that I can direct it to them. If it's a general question, then I will just pose it to the panel, and it'll be a bit of fastest finger first. Well, that'll be a bit of a game for us, won't it, guys? We'll just see who gets to the microphone first to answer any general questions. And then we're going to stay on, the panel, myself and the panel are going to stay on for 30 minutes at the end, an extra half an hour for those of you who do want to hang on and get some more information, a general chat, or if you have any more questions. So I hope that is all pretty straightforward and that makes sense. Myself, so for those of you who don't know me, I can see a few familiar names and familiar faces. My name is Jane Bellis, and I am probably, I think, the only person other than Anthony here today speaking who doesn't have a background in education. I've never been a teacher in the traditional sense. I'm a coach, I'm a trainer, and I specialise in reaching the unreachable and teaching the unteachable. That is my bag, and I work within mental health, resilience, well-being, which, as we know, is a huge topic across the board, but particularly in education at the moment. I have spent many years working in isolation rooms. What a lovely place to be, working with the young people and children who are incredibly disruptive, the naughty kids, the bad kids who actually are the most unheard and overlooked and traumatized young people who have that sort of extra layer of trauma given to them by being punished because their communication style might not work with what's going on in the classroom environment. So I've done a lot of work there. I have worked also with big year groups. So I've worked in school halls with year groups, having some really fun, creative interventions around mental health and growth mindset and emotional intelligence, which has been an absolute pleasure. I've worked with teachers, I've worked with staff, I've worked with leadership teams. I have worked out in the community with progression team and youth justice out in the community in some very interesting spaces with NEETs, so those who are not in education, employment or training, who aren't even within sniffing distance of a school because of the challenges that they're facing, and done some extensive work with things like county lines and addiction and the real tough stuff. I'm also a mum. I'm a mum of 4. I have 4 children who have all been through the education system. Thank goodness. My youngest is now 17 on an apprenticeship. I have, ranging from university to apprenticeships, everything in between. So I have a lot of experience there as a parent. I'm also a school governor. I've been a chair of governors for a primary school for the past 15 years. So I have some experience with things like budgets and with the curriculum in general. So I feel like I bring a kind of a well-rounded approach to the table. I set up a community interest company in 2015, which is based around creative and nature-based interventions across various demographics, various communities. So we do a lot of work within schools, within alternative provision. So I have a great team that's run now by my 2 fantastic directors and a team of freelancers who do some incredible work in some incredibly deprived spaces. The real reason that I'm here and the big thing that I'm bringing to the table is my own program, which I've been developing over the last 10 years, called Mindset Mojo. And it's all around neuroscience coaching and bringing some, shall we say, creative application of some really difficult, tough topics to help people understand themselves and the world around them. Really, really passionate about it. And it's now being developed into a digital platform. So lots of resources for teachers and for students, and it will be an app as well. So I'm going to be bringing that to the table with this collective of amazing people. And the speakers that you're going to hear today, we all have 2 things in common. And the first one is an absolute passion and drive to be out there at the front and helping to create this much needed change that we're all aware of that's needed within education. And even though we're from very different backgrounds, we have very different skills and we offer very different things, that is one of the things that connects us, it is our passion to do that. And the second thing that binds us is our connection to a gentleman that I'm going to introduce you to shortly, smiling away in the corner, he's in the corner of my screen, Mr. Anthony Willoughby. So the common denominator here is that we have all at some point in our lives and careers met Anthony. He is the driving force behind today and the person that's brought us all together. And I met Anthony some years ago now while I was working with a project around our homeless community. I think I've seen Pete on here somewhere as well. And I thought I had a really, really good, really robust, very innovative toolkit that I used in lots of different spaces. Till I heard Anthony speak about his framework and his experiences all over the world, working with Indigenous tribes and bringing back the wisdom. And I immediately thought, this is a game changer, and I need to work with this man, and I need to start to use these tools in my practice. And that's what I've been doing ever since. I have some of the things that you're going to hear about throughout this afternoon, I've been using personally in my own practice, my own self-care practice, but also in all kinds of settings, from working in corporate spaces, working with leadership, working in schools, working with, I've done one of these creative tools with somebody who lives in a tent in the homeless community. So really, really diverse range of people that are able to access what they wouldn't have been able to access before. And this is why I'm so excited about being able to be here today and supporting this webinar, bringing things together. So I'm going to show you a little video before Anthony takes over and tells you a little bit about himself and his background and what he's been doing. So let's see how good my tech skills are, whether I can make this work or not. Otherwise, I'm going to ruin my fantastic introduction now, aren't I? Let's see. Anthony.
Thank you so much. I really want to stress, thank you very much, Jane, and everybody else. I've had the great pleasure of meeting, and I'm seeing some old friends here. I just want to say that the video you saw was created by a chap called Paul Williamson, who is a friend, and he's just done it as a friend to promote. And what we really want to do is to work in partnership and bring in the different areas of expertise. I'm not an educator. I was fortunately told that I should not go to university, but would I like to go to America? So my life has been really, is there another way of inspiring people? And I'd just like to show a few slides, but thank you everybody for taking the time to be here today. And I just like to just show a few photographs of really how these ideas and what we've been doing with these ideas. And I'm Anthony Willoughby, and I've been married for 30 years, but this is really the horseman in Mongolia. This was taken about 3 years ago when I was, in almost 70. And the idea of, watching them come towards me, and that's how close the horses came over me. So I think, what is wealth really? What is that natural wisdom that we have in us, those rivers where we grow our crops, those mountains? And that's what they know in New Zealand when you ask someone where they're from. So what is our wealth? How do we reimagine wealth in a different way? And this is a quote from a friend of ours in America, but wealth is meant to bring us into the fullness and joy and what is alive in us. And is there a way, I believe, working together, we can bring this out in children? And this is a photograph I took of Bill Gates 30 years ago, with his kite on the Great Wall. And you can see that level of happiness. And amazingly, yesterday, I just happened to see that he posted it on LinkedIn. So 30 years later, he remembers, and he talks about memories of his father, who is no longer there. So now I don't know whether he'll respond, but there is a photograph of his father. So how do we give people these memories? And what is it we want to really, really be known for in our hearts? Whether we're with those eagle hunters of Western Mongolia, a bigger picture to inspire and excite us of what is possible in our lives. So when we're working with schools or with anybody, with any organization, with Jane does the same thing. What is wealth? Can we reimagine it? And this is what we'll be talking about today, the hunting, protecting, and growing. So young children can talk about the experience, the zest, the passion to protect and start looking at their life differently. So every child has a map that they can talk to their parents about, their teachers. What is it, those bridges of confidence that they want to create? And this is exactly the same thing we do with executives on the Great Wall of China. We help them think about their life, tap into those instincts. So whether you're in Papua New Guinea, where everybody knows their territory, or you're leading Ferrari in Australia, once people have a map, it is that wisdom of how we can help each other to tap into that natural sense of wisdom and share our knowledge, share what we actually have that is different but similar. So please enjoy what we believe is a new way of looking at really what is important in life. Years ago, I wrote a book called In Search of Inspiration. And the opening line is, I have the freedom of choice to shape my own destiny. So my quest has been, what do I need to understand about myself and the laws of Mother Nature? So instead of doing it academically, what I've done is to travel the world on lightly planned expeditions and journeys. When I was 22, I left England really in search of a gold Rolex, and I got my Rolex and I really wasn't very happy. So I thought there's got to be more. And I went off on a camel safari in northern Kenya. And I saw the Maasai, and what I saw is they had an incredible sense of clarity, purpose, and identity. And I thought, why don't I have it? So I decided I'd go and meet the Papua New Guinea ambassador in Tokyo. And he said, go to my village. And I became sort of fascinated. What is leadership? What have we lost? How do we hand out our feathers? How do we earn our seat at the table Is there a way of tapping into those instincts that we've forgotten? So in other words, to find out about leadership, instead of learning it, I decided to do it. So I organized trips across the deserts of China, across the rivers and mountains of Papua New Guinea, climbing mountains in China. And what I saw was the incredible power of teamwork. So I opened the first outdoor team building center in Japan. And that's where I saw that people still said, where do I fit in? Where do I belong? Where am I recognized? And I started to use the Great Wall as a metaphor. But what I saw is people wanted context for conversations. So I started to ask companies and organizations to draw maps. How did they see their territory? And what I've discovered is we can simplify what we're trying to achieve in our life down to the original icons of what are we hunting? What are we nurturing? What are we growing? Who do we really, really need around our fire? And what I find fascinating is that it works with companies, which is fantastic, working with whether it's Google or all over the world. But really what has been most exciting for us and for Doutzen, who is here as well with us in the audience, who we're working with together, and everybody else. And this is through Jane and through Pete Humphreys, who is here, to help people say, these are my maps. This is where I'm valuable. This is what I want to do. They can feel the power of their personality, that they're in control of their destiny. They can look at their different places, those different journeys that people have been on. And Pete can talk about this, how it unleashes people's sense of community. So whether we're working with prefects at Glasgow Academy, or we're working at Ipswich School here with the girls talking and the boys talking about their future, talking about their dreams and their hopes, or a school in Alloa in a difficult part of Scotland. All children have in common, it seems, is how do they build the confidence? What do they need to grow? And how during the term time can they really start to see that they are growing? And where we've been and where I met Elfin originally is Nord Anglia School in Dubai. And we're just asking children, what is that wisdom and knowledge you need to live a purposeful life? And I never know what people are going to draw, but it was just a lovely sense of energy of you teachers being able to talk to the students about what's really important in their lives, and students being able to share those goals, those dreams, and that way forward. And you can just see this sense of intensity inside everybody. There are those rivers, those mountains, those areas where they want to cross. And these maps bring clarity. They bring an understanding that just seems to be universal. We all want that love, that wisdom, that family, that enrichment. How can we create it? Is there another way of inspiring children, teachers, everybody to look at it differently? Jane, this is someone who Jane has been working with, an amazing woman called Macy. She's a self-selected mute, but she still knows who she wants around her fire. She knows the respect she wants to grow. And I just think it is so powerful that any student, this was taken last Saturday at a community center where you had students, their parents and others talking about, this is my world. I feel a sense of power. I can make things happen. I can change the world. The same as with teachers, we can use it. But what we want to talk about today is how can we turn this into part of a curriculum? So everybody can share their hopes, fears with honesty, a sense of identity, a sense of passion, purpose, and that we can do more in our lives. Because I think that is what we want to do. How can we bring it to the curriculum of the IB, the risk takers? How can we adapt it to schools so that teachers can be engaged? The students can talk about trust and other areas. And then we can bring the Maasai in to talk about the values that have been with them forever. So that is really what we are looking at. is there another way? And that is why it's such a great pleasure to have the educators with amazing experiences who can talk about what is an education and really, really how we can do something different. And therefore, it's a great privilege, Chris, to have you there. I'll let you introduce yourself, but shall we start with your map? But please, can you say a little bit first about yourself?
Yeah, welcome everybody, and thank you for being here. I've been a teacher. I've been involved in education for 39 years. I think some of the other things said 35. I've gone on a little bit. So 39 years of actual teaching, being involved in education. 14 years ago, I made the decision to step out from school leadership, and I started a company, and we've worked with hundreds of schools across the UK and beyond. Our focus is entirely on how we put schools together and looking at the children's lived experience. So get very deep into not content delivery. So I'm not here to teach elements of maths or English or science, but what is the total experience that a child has, and are we serving children well in terms of what we put together? Now, lots of teachers will talk about the kind of the constrained curriculum. It's packed with all sorts of stuff. But a bit of history around this thing you've got on the screen. I met Anthony in 2020. It was actually, as you can see on the date in the bottom left-hand corner, it was the 4th of March 2020. 21 days later, every school in England closed. My order book shut, and all of the schools that we were going to be working with disappeared because the pandemic arrived. As I was working with Anthony was delivering a mapping session to a group of chief executives. We were all running companies and looking at the way forward. My map, as you can see here, was looking at the education system, all the pressures on it, all the frustrations, all of the things that are going on. People saying we want new world, past is new, I want to move on to something else. So many people exiting the profession because they've got people pointing fingers at them, throwing things at them, and all of the pressures around the education system as it has. The state sector, I don't find very much different in the independent sector. The state sector, people think that it's a little freer and there's a little more ability to do your own thing. Whether our minds are in that place or another thing. So on that day, I kind of projected this. There's a cavern between that sense of sense, understanding, and wisdom, the 42, the answer to everything. Let's get out there to something new, and the world that was in front of us. What I saw after the pandemic, so a few days later, this is the 28th of April. Can we go back one, Anthony?
Yeah, we can.
So it was just, let's go out into the new world. And there was this sandpit of discovery. The new world was forming, and computers, Boxed, Teams, Zoom, all these things started coming out. And we were talking about the fires of hope, what's coming forward. And then, sorry, Anthony, go to the next one with kind of this is the way to the possible. So right. From what it was to now, this new world. Have we got the last one there, Anthony?
Sorry.
No, you're okay. I'll pause for a second. There we go. So that where we are now, we're into this, and I don't know if you can see right in the top right-hand corner, there's this sense of come back to what we knew. I found the tool really helpful in planning a response to the frustrations that I was feeling as a company, the world that I knew and know very well, which is the education world, and how this thinking can impact every aspect of what we do. And so Anthony was saying to me, every child having a map, every child having this skill. So I grew up in the world of that balance of competency against knowledge. A lot of education is focused on the acquisition of lots of knowledge. I came from a world of, I want skills, I want understanding, I want to be competent. Anthony and I have taken this into a number of schools, and we've delivered territory mapping to a number of different organizations, some of them at sixth form level, some of them below sixth form level, so 17 pluses and around 14 to 16-year-olds. And one of the questions we found from the young people very much was, I've never really thought about my future. I don't know about what's coming. I don't. And another group we worked with, their whole focus was on, well, university is the only answer, and as long as I get into university, everything's going to be okay. I challenged one head teacher, and who proudly said to me, 50% of my children go to university when they're finished at sixth form. I said to him, what happened to the other 50%? And he actually looked at me with his mouth open and said, do you know, no one has ever asked me that question. I don't know the answer. And it was such a shocking step. Well, okay, so how have we equipped these children for their futures if that predetermined path isn't the predetermined path for that child? So the tool that we've been talking about, the territory mapping, actually, one of the things that Anthony's just talked about, that whole focus on the fire, you know, the one of the most powerful things that I've seen for children is, who do you want around your campfire? Who are the people that you need to build trusting relationships with to be the confidant or the advisor or the inspirer of the next step? Who are the people that around your fire that you trust? And I found in young people that that's a really powerful metaphor, and they can go away and say, yeah, okay, I need to build trusting relationships with those people to build that space. And it's a place of safety rather than I have no idea where I'm going. And the only source of, not to say family isn't a great place, but the only place is family. And what if the experience I want is more than that, or different from what they've experienced? So what we've done is to present this to schools as a journey. And it's been really impactful. As Anthony's just shown you some of the schools that have done it, but it's not just a one-off experience. This is a kind of methodology of thinking which goes beyond that. And it's been really powerful, Anthony, hasn't it, to have those conversations with young people that say, well, I've got a tool now. I've got the competency to face decision making, and it's based on this millennia old wisdom of understanding the territory that I want to go into and the territory that I have. Some of those are really challenging, which some of those pictures you've seen are really, you know, that wasn't my experience, but I found it really, really powerful in the sense of our business. If I told you that when I did this work with Anthony in 2020, my business was myself, an administrator, a finance person, and one other person. On Monday, I had my team together. There were 16 people. We've grown the business 3 times. So in the sense of business orientation, I would say territory mapping is really that impactful. But a group of people where someone came into the team and said, wow, what a group of people you've gathered together to do what you do. And that's how impactful that whole process has been for us. So one, I can commend it as a way forward. 2, it's doing what we needed to do to be successful. But 3, there's so much to be done. I think teachers need a wider view of not just more content to put into the curriculum, but actually the resilient capacity to be able to do that next thing. So how do we shape this? And this is a methodology for thinking and approach, which really has wonderful power. And I think that's why I'm sitting here endorsing it, because I've seen and felt it. But I think also it's a tool, as Anthony said, that every person, every child in school, independent or state sector, wherever, we need to teach children how to do this. We've seen it from Jane's work in therapeutic response, but in a sense, why wait till we get to the need of therapy? Why not empower children before that so they don't need that approach? And that's how I see this being really impactful in those steps forward. So, you know, those questions, what are you hunting and protecting and growing? That's a great analogy, and it's helped to shape ourselves in terms of what we're doing. So in terms of where you'll get our contact details at the end. So Smart Curriculum, that's my company. We're endorsing this, but I'm Chris Jones is fully involved in shaping this. And I'm, with Anthony, I value greatly the friendship that we've developed, but also that ability to put something in people's hands that's a powerful tool for that next step. Anthony.
Thank you very, very much, Chris. Yeah, it's been an absolute privilege working with you, working with the different schools and looking at that sense of bewilderment on people's faces. What is this all about? Who is this old man waving his arms? Really, Chris, now it's been absolutely fabulous with Ipswich and the other schools that we've worked with. So really fabulous. The next person I'd love to introduce you to is Valerie. Well, Valerie I met because we were both locked out of a set of meeting rooms or breakout sessions in a Zoom call about 3 or 4 years ago. We had a lovely conversation, and Valerie has taken me into she'll talk about into the college development for the leadership of the school leaders. But also I can obviously talk about lessons from the Maasai and lessons from Papua New Guinea and Mongolia. But Valerie actually came to Kenya with me in December last year with her daughter Jude and her husband, just to feel that sense of clarity, to map with the Maasai and to see that what we're trying to do, I think, is just natural. It's inside us. And how do we unleash and let it grow? But Valerie, it's a great pleasure. And thank you so much for contributing and agreeing to be here today. Very, very much appreciated. I'll let you explain a little bit about your work and what you're doing with the College Development Network.
Thank you, Anthony. Yeah, I'm not on mute. Thank you. And hello to everybody here. I think it's longer than 3 or 4 years ago, Anthony. I'd say it's more like 5 or 6 years ago, 5 years ago anyway, that we met when I showed up for an online session on territory mapping. And for some reason, hard as they tried, they couldn't get me into a breakout room. So I ended up in a room with Anthony and had a really rich conversation. My own background, I've been in education, in further education in Scotland for over 25 years. And I worked in a college, I used to lecture in learning and development and leadership. And then just over 5 years ago, I moved to College Development Network. So we're an enhancement agency that's funded by the Scottish Funding Council. And our purpose is to deliver pathways of learning for staff in colleges. And we have a number of different themes. And I've led on leadership development, and that's leadership at all levels. And I'm a bit of a rebel, and I like new ideas. I'm passionate about just finding new ways of doing things and trying new ways of doing things. So I was employed basically to bring something really new around leadership development. So I developed a number of programs. One of them is our executive leadership program. And while I had the funding, I wanted to be as brave and bold as I could and do things and try things that were quite different. So we had a session with equine assisted leadership. And we had a session in Police Scotland and immersive managing a crisis session. But having met and done the territory mapping with Anthony, I really wanted to bring that in because I've been in a lot of conversations about education and further education and tertiary education and leadership. And it was words, and they were all valid. But I really wanted to get a sense of how people actually saw the territory, the really complex territory that we're operating in. So I invited Anthony and Doutzen, the wonderful duo who complement each other so well, to come and to facilitate a session. Now, we were able to do it online. I think the first one actually was during COVID, and we did it online. People really loved it. And some of them were kind of surprised that they really loved it. It just gave them the opportunity to do something different. Now, we've continued to have Doutzen and Anthony back, and I'm just about to launch another series, and hopefully we'll be having them face-to-face because people wanted to do this work face-to-face and they wanted to be able to share things with each other. So it was an executive leadership program, and Anthony and Doutzen invited the participants to map their territory. And it was such a revelation for different people in very similar positions to be able to share how they perceived their territory. That was a lovely thing. We haven't, we kind of took a lot for granted before. We'd speak about different stakeholders and different agencies, but in terms of how we perceive them as a threat or however we perceive them, it was great to be able to see it visually. And I have had, people who like to draw just dive straight in. People who don't are maybe a bit more, crikey, what am I going to do here? But when people get into this, it's just so liberating. It's just so lovely. And the feedback that I've had after the first workshop, when I was evaluating at the end, one of the participants had gone for a principal's role in one of the colleges. And he came to me and he said, do you know what I did? I used my territory mapping in my interview. He said, I just took it in and I put it down in front of them. And I said, this is how I see it. This is where we are. These are the challenges. Now, he didn't get that job, but he got feedback that they were really blown away by how he perceived it. And since then, he has been promoted. He's now a vice principal. Or he's an assistant principal. Sorry, not a vice principal. He's an assistant principal. And the feedback was, we love that and we don't want to let go. We want to know more about that. So he used it again when in the second job interview, but he actually got an artist to do a big version of it for him, a professional artist, and he has it framed in his office. And he said it just continuously reminds him when he looks up, he thinks, I know what I'm trying to achieve here. When he feels weary or whatever, he looks up and he thinks, yes. So that was just fantastic to hear that it was put to good use, that it really had impact. And I have had other leaders come back and say, one in particular was saying that he had a member of staff and in terms of communicating with that member of staff, he was trying to explain something and he just felt that the communication wasn't as clear as it could be. And he took out his map and he said, look, this is how I see it. And this is where I think you can really make a contribution. And he said it was just such a lovely way to have that conversation because it opened right up. And the person in his team that he was working with was saying, well, I can make a contribution here. And they could both visualize it. So that was another wonderful piece of feedback. Another manager from that group, a second one recently told me from another cohort that he used his map and he also got a job that they really appreciated, how it helped him to be able to articulate what he wanted to. And he has now invited his team to draw maps so that he's got a clear understanding, so that the whole team have a clear understanding of how each other sees the landscape that they're in and what it is they're trying to achieve. And one of the lovely things as well is that as the years have gone on, the first cohort, they come together regularly, fairly regularly, about every 3 months, and they call it their campfire. Going back to what Chris said, they recognize the value in drawing the right people together that can support each other. So now they have campfires, and I'm fortunate enough to be invited along. And that's where really trusted work comes up, and people just have a shared understanding of context. They're not all in the same context, but they understand each other. So I just wanted to share that because I think it's really impactful. It's very different from the perspective that Chris is coming from, but it's another really valuable use of territory mapping and how impactful it has been in education. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Valerie. I mean, Doutzen and myself have loved working with you. It's just the way you bring us in, and it's the partnerships, and that is really what is so important. And it's been such fun. One session is, so please draw a map of your territory, then people can explain it. And then on the next day, on the next time, where is your leadership most needed? It just provides context for a really, really exciting conversation. So that I think is the exciting part of it. But as I say, everything is a partnership. I mean, I am not an educator, as I've said at the beginning. I'm really working with Nord Anglia in Dubai. It was by complete coincidence. I met Matthew Farthing 15 years ago, and I got on well. He said, yes, let's work together. And we went and worked with his executive team on the Great Wall of China. And he's someone who's just said, yes, let's do it. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. And then when he became head of Nord Anglia in Dubai, and I was passing through, he said, please come along. And really, really his warmth, his way to take on risks, the way to do things differently has been inspirational. And one of the people that he's introduced me to about 4 years ago, is Elfin, who you'll be listening to. But I want to really, really say what Elfin has done is to take the concept and develop it. And that's what we want to do. We're not experts. I just believe working together transparently, openly, around a core set of let's be inspirational and put the child at the future of their own destiny. That's what I think we can really do together. And Elfin, it's a real, real pleasure, and look forward to seeing you next week in Dubai. But please, would you like to talk a little bit about how you see it and the wonderful programs you've created?
Yes, thank you, Anthony, and thank you everyone for being on the call today. So yeah, my name's Elfin. I used to teach design technology at Nord Anglia International School. Been teaching design for the last 13 years, but last year I jumped out of education into a slightly different job. Still keeping my hand in education, of course, but now I work for a company in Dubai called Kids Inc. And we consult on educational design. We do interior design, fit outs, and we've now opened an architect company here as well. So I've known Anthony, as you said, for the last 4 years. When Anthony came in to develop or to help us with our moral education at Nord Anglia Dubai. And at the time, I had a year 9 class, quite a difficult class, tutor group. Difficult, not in a behavior sense, but a new class for me. I was taking them on for the first time, and through the mapping, it really helped me understand my students, because as you know, everyone learns in a different way, and of course, everyone communicates in a different way as well. So for me to ask questions, not every single student wanted to answer in the same way. Some students prefer to work visually. Some students like to write. And through the introduction of the mapping, I was really happy that I was able to understand the students a bit better. So over the last few years, I've been working closely with Anthony to look at the territory mapping and the excellent work that he's done to see how we can bring this down to student level. And as we said earlier, as Anthony said, every student should have a map, and that's what we're trying to achieve here with the Dupoto platform. So you might ask what Dupoto actually stands for. And people have already started to ask, what is Dupoto? Now then, Dupoto actually translates to wealth in the Maasai language, which is exactly what we wanted people to ask. So what is Dupoto translates to what is wealth. So getting students to work together on this online community, but also keeping the balance as well. So we're seeing AI being a big thing at the moment and a big push on technology. So it's up to us as teachers, educators, parents, the community really to just help students with the balance between the skill development, keeping onto tradition, cultures, but also being innovative as well. So what we've been able to do is to work on the iconography with Anthony to develop and just to give a clear understanding to students of what these actually mean. So the first thing we did was look at year 7. So a lot of students, especially in Dubai and the UK, they move into year 7, they make new friends, they enter a new community or a new territory. So what we wanted to do was to start the year off, hopefully in September, where students are given the online platform, they register, and they hopefully map their future. So they're looking at short term, the year 7. And if we just look at these here, we can click on the hut, and it'll tell them exactly what it represents. So the hut representing the wider community. So friends, teachers, family, and anyone else who plays a significant part in their journey. We then look at the campfire, for example, where at year 7 level, they might have close friends who's their go-to student, go-to friend. For example, if a student was bullied, if a student wanted some support with their homework, who are the people they trust within their community? What teachers do they trust? And even when they go home, then can they open up to their family and have these discussions about what they want to achieve? A lot of students now are looking at doing more vocational based studies as well, and not wanting to go to universities, for example, but too afraid to have that conversation with their parents, and not being able to communicate why. And it was quite nice to see students doing this at Nord Anglia. They were using the mapping technique in order to do it. So what we really want to do is teach students about the traditions and the journey that Anthony has been on over the last few years, meeting the tribal communities, especially Emmanuel, who actually helped us with the naming of this website, and really understanding what their territory is and what their wealth is. Because we ask a lot of students these days, what do you want to become? And some of them will say, I want to become an influencer. And what is wealth? They might look at the physical things that they own, house, a Porsche here in Dubai. It's because we're from a different background where we have a lot of wealth here in Dubai amongst our families. So wealth to them might be a little bit different. So we want to keep the element of tradition. It's really important that people are able to link back to that. But also looking at communities, so the community within Dubai, but also bringing in sustainability and thinking about how we can support other communities around the world. So we've been in discussion with a couple of other organisations who actually want to partner up with us in order to send that message out and develop content alongside us to teach people about what's happening within these communities in Kenya, for example, and what we can do to support. Because it's not about just financial contributions; it's about changing mindsets, and sometimes that takes generations. So what we've developed here are Dubuto cards. So this is one thing that we worked on over the last few weeks, is to push out skill development. So what we did a few years ago at Nord Anglia, we started what we call the DICE curriculum, so bringing in 4 subjects together, really pushing skill development amongst that subject, and then linking them to the Global Sustainable Goals. Now then, this really gave the students a lot of choice, and all of a sudden they were really interested and engaged in the lessons that we taught. And then other students brought into this along with other teachers as well. So what we've actually developed is a set of cards. There's over 200 cards in the pack, and they all link to the metaphoric icon. So if we look at this one, for example, these set of cards here are specifically for campfire. So we go through different tasks, different skills, role play, draw, discuss, debate. The cards actually tell them if they can do it in an individual, pair, or group as well. So if we just take this one, for example, debates in the digital age, are virtual supports as effective as physical ones? So looking at the past, looking at the present and the future, but also looking at people as well, and how we can support problems that are linked to these kind of scenarios as well. So there's over 200 scenarios here to choose from, and we're also bringing in Make as well. So the idea is that we could use these across all subjects as lesson starters, as extension tasks for students as well. And then to go with this, we've developed where is it here? So what we've done is we've developed a random generator. So just to make things a bit more interesting for students, because lessons can get a bit repetitive at times, we wanted to actually push the fact that mapping can be used for your personal goals. A couple of my friends are actually using this at the moment to develop their fitness plan, and they're doing it together. And obviously the map changes over time. So they were like, what do we do with this? How do we bring it back? So what the random generator does, we can take a look at sports, for example, and it will throw out different different people related to sports. Students might know these people, but students might also have to research into them. And what we want them to do is to be able to use these people and reflect on the journey that they've been on, the challenges that they faced, because we believe by doing this and mapping out for someone who's already been through the process and who's already been successful, is to take back and look, how did they actually get there? What community support did they have? What were their achievements? What did they achieve on the mountains? What were their mammoth tasks? And then the river, the challenges. So everyone's different in their approach as well. And we see this a lot with students. Some students see the river as risks, full of risks. Some people will jump straight in and swim. And then you've got some of the students who will go back, gather their community, and then come and build the bridge. I've also had one student saying, I'm going to go back to the mountain, collect the rocks and make my stepping stones. So using your success and bringing it back with you and using that to help you get to the next part of your journey. And then obviously the future then on the other side of the map as well. So we're looking at, okay, once you get there, what do we do? So what we've done is we've developed a login for students as part of the platform that we're working on, so that students can save their own maps. So as they go through Key Stage 3 into Key Stage 4, they'll be able to reflect on how far they've come, and hopefully get into the habit of developing maps for themselves through the journey of secondary school into university, but also for the smaller projects that they do as well. So there's a tab here for sustainability, looking at the SDGs. So really kind of creative thing to do would be to get them to map a project, for example. So instead of us giving lesson plans and trying to stick to the lesson plans as well, it encourages teachers to be a bit more free and letting the students do the research, letting the students explore, let them be curious about what's going on. One of the most important tasks, I think, is for us to educate students on how to find things out for themselves as well, because times have changed, and we had teachers 20, 30 years ago who we had books in classrooms and they owned the knowledge and they closed the book and then they went home. Things have changed now because we've got knowledge and it's so accessible on your phone, on your tablet. So it's quite easy for us to be able to do this. So flipping the classroom in that way. So students can come and have fun by themselves here. And then we move on to the Key Stage 3 curriculum, as we said. So we've developed a 12 lessons here, focusing on mapping. So there's a book that each student would get as well. We don't want to miss out on the physical element, and we don't want to move on fully digitally, because accessibility is key for this, because everyone should have a map. So we want people to have access to everything, of course, but we want to have a more hybrid approach as well. So what we've done is we've created these lessons here, and instead of doing a full-on day with students, we believe that we should be teaching them about community. What's within your community, your local community? What can you do to help? What problems do you have? So really going into these in depth, and then just looking at the climb, the feathers of wisdom, reflection tasks at the end, and then a big write, just to make sure that they fully understand what they've done throughout the course. Now then, we will be doing more sessions on these. We've got a Join Our Tribe registration button at the top, and we'll also send a link to Jane, just so that we can. So if you are interested in getting involved in this, please feel free to register. But the main aim of this platform is for us to be able to create something for everyone, as I said. So we know a lot of students and teachers are using a hybrid model now. We want to be able to give students that are working at home a sense of belonging, but also the sense of community. So creating an online community, no matter where in the world you are, you'll be able to share your maps with other students, so that students can see that everyone's going through the same thing, really. We're all going to face challenges in our lives. No matter how much you plan, you're still going to face some kind of challenge. So just creating that community, and then we're going to have courses online for universities, and also CPD sessions for teachers as well. So what we'd like to get is to a stage where we can also work with the teachers in that community, in order to have the teachers develop and present this to students as well over time. So I think I went through everything there, Anthony. I know I only had 10 minutes, but hopefully I covered it all.
Wow.
Thank you all.
That is fabulous, Elfyn. Thank you so much. And as I was saying, partnership, community, that's really what we want to build. Clearly, this requires tremendous courage on people to ask students, to ask teachers, to really, really start to think about what is important. And that is, I can't wait to sit down with you next week and we can really start to see what we can do. But someone who I've met recently, actually, we met in London at an exhibition, is Tracy. And you might notice there are lots of Jones. When Tracy and Elfyn Jones met, they started chattering away in Welsh because they're both fluent Welsh speakers. And I also love that sense of identity, of language, of really, really the essence of who we are is that language that we have as a culture. But Tracy, you've been involved in education for a long time, and I just sort of love your thoughts. We haven't done anything yet, but I think that's sort of the fun of the adventure of what we're talking about.
Yeah, and thank you, Anthony. Yeah, I'm at the start of my journey with Anthony. I was blessed to have met him in November. I think that was one of the best things that came out of that expo in November. I was very, very, very fortunate to have bumped into Anthony, and his energy during that day. I could sit and listen to him all day. There was an instant connection with us. For me, my heart is really in education for our younger generation, and especially for our teachers as well. And I think Chris touched on it earlier on about people leaving the environment at the moment. And what we want to try and do is retain our amazing staff. So I was in education for 20 plus years, and then in 2006 escaped and started my own company and found myself starting the business, coming back into education. So it's called Chrysalis Mindset Coaching. And at the time, I was sort of my own chrysalis for a couple of years as we sort of like cooned myself within my own chrysalis while I started the journey. And if I'd have had a map back then, Anthony, I think my journey would have been a lot quicker and a lot better as well if I'd have understood that side of things. So to date, I found myself training back in the education sector to start with. We further developed now into businesses, corporates, high net worth, ultra high net worth, sports, military. We're in many, many different industries. And people said to me, gosh, you do work in many industries, to which I replied, each and every one of us has a mind, and this is what we work with. We work with elevating emotional literacy within individuals and teams, raising human performance. Now, what we focus on is nurturing the inner wisdom, enabling leaders to grow in an ever-challenging world. So, of course, when I met Anthony and he talked about what is wisdom and wealth, that connection was just so strong. Now, to date, we have trained over 4,000 educators within our resilience programs and over 356 senior leaders and head teachers with our 6-day advanced leadership program. As I mentioned, we are at a starting point of our journey with Anthony, and now I can see really clearly how this mapping and the mapping territory is going to be able to be embedded within our programs. Partnerships are so important to develop within our system, having those strong bonds with other people that you can draw in on and pull in on. As you can see with Alvin's work there, absolutely fantastic. That platform is amazing. And what Chris and Jane and Valerie are also doing within the education sector, there's great people that we can draw in on to really enhance those territory mappings. But for us starting this journey, and some of you might be in this situation where you think, how could we start to implement this territory mapping? For me, I can see it very clearly, especially for our 6-day program for senior leaders. And we're going to add another piece on at the start of that program, where we're going to start to just get staff to do their own mapping. Throughout our 6-day program, then over that 12 weeks, we can take them on that journey and really further develop and enhance those toolkits. And I know that that's going to really elevate where our senior leaders are at the moment. We work a lot with head teachers. We coach many head teachers around Wales and in England. And the same things that are coming through. The recent trends that we're finding for head teachers at the moment is struggling with communities and also conflicts. So even seeing how this mapping could work for head teachers working within the community with their parents, I believe would be very powerful as well. We are working with some head teachers at the moment that they are finding themselves 80% managing communities and conflicts and 20% on the strategic. So by bringing in these maps and being able to see what are their challenges, what are their mammoth tasks, what are the rivers, who do they want around their campfires, they can start to draw in communities as well, start to draw in the parents, start to work together, to start to create these maps together and create a much deeper understanding. And this is where I can see how it's going to start to further develop. And even bringing in those young adults, you know, where Chris mentioned as well, with the uncertainty around their future, being able to sit as families, as communities within the schools, sitting together, creating these maps. I honestly see sort of like little twilights at the end of schools where parents come in with their children to work collectively and collaboratively together to be able to start to work cohesively. Because we are starting to see communities, parts of communities breaking down, unfortunately. And I feel for me, it could be a very powerful tool as well. Where I see it also working quite well is not only with those communities, but within smaller teams, new heads coming into schools, understanding their teams, understanding dynamics, being able to understand sort of like the bigger picture. We have a new curriculum coming here in Wales. We're working through it at the moment. And I believe as well that this could be a really good point for some of these schools and some of these leaders as well, because I think they're under a lot of challenging times at the moment, exciting times. But however, the day-to-day business takes them away sometimes from what they could be sort of further developing with the curriculum as well. So this is where I'm at the moment with it, at a starting point. Extremely blessed to have come across an amazing group of people where I'm enjoying, looking forward to further developing these partnerships as well, and understanding and learning more about the mapping territories as well. So I will hopefully be joining Anthony on a trip before long as well, and be able to really learn first-hand experiences from them as well, so that we can start to nurture and just strengthen our education sector and start to really nurture them, because I really believe that we need to look after our staff, especially the ones that are looking, you know, we look after our young adults, look after the children for the next generation. And I think looking after our staff and our heads as well is equally important as well, and just maintaining them in their roles as well. So that's where I'm at, Anthony. I'm going to keep it quite short here as well, because like I said, I'm at the start. I could carry on talking and I'll probably talk all afternoon, but I feel for us this year, like I said, because I'm at the start of the journey here, I really feel that I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into some of these territory mappings with our 6-day program and our resilience training as well, especially for our staff members.
Tracy, thank you so much for those wonderful words, and I feel equally blessed to have bumped into you at that exhibition. But no, it's just wonderful, and we just don't really know what's going to happen with it, and how it can evolve, how it can grow, how it can nurture people's hopes and fears. And I think one of the things that I absolutely love, and we did it in Crawley on last Saturday evening, was when you had parents and their children comparing notes and comparing maps, and you just see this lovely, lovely sort of expression of people talking to each other in another way. And I think, Valerie, you also did it with your daughter as well, and it creates other conversations. But Jane, I think you've also, this is where you've been really working with the carers, with the other communities. So those are some of the other areas. But thank you very much to everybody for fantastic, and Elfyn, what you've created is quite amazing. Thank you.
Stunning, isn't it? Absolutely stunning. And I think, yeah, we're all We are all in the same storm. We are just not in the same boat. That's the message, isn't it? That this applies to everybody, no matter what, whether it's staff, whether it's parents, whether it's students. And it really is a powerful tool. And as Tracy said, it's about co-creating. I think that's the point that we're at as a team and as a group of like-minded individuals. We want to co-create. We want to co-create with schools, with head teachers, with decision makers, with young people, with parents, with families. That's the way forward for us. And I'm just going to test out, again, my technological skills. I've done a little bit of a poll, and I'm going to try and put that now, a bit of audience interaction, because you've all been sat there for quite a while now, haven't you, listening? So I'm going to pop this poll, if it will let me. Only 3 questions, and just while I'm just running you through very quickly the most impactful mapping session I've done, if you just see if it pops up on the screen. Somebody tell me if you can see it. Tracy, I can see you. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the poll? Yay,
Yeah.
brilliant. If you're happy to, just answer those 3 questions so we can find out who we've got on the call, where you're from and what your interest is, and just so that we can get a feel and a flavour for the dynamics in the room. And I'll fill you in on the most powerful mapping session that I've done. And it actually wasn't in a school setting, and it wasn't specifically for young people. It was in one of the most deprived communities in North East Wales. We were running a session that was an open session just for people who are just completely lost and feeling completely overlooked, completely unheard. And we wanted to make it an accessible session for anyone who needed it, absolutely anybody. And we ended up with, we had some biscuits, and we had the cuppers, the brews were on, and the biscuits were there, and we had some cakes, and we ended up with a couple of young people, neurodivergent young people who really struggled in mainstream education, and that they weren't in school, so they had nothing else to do and nowhere else to go, and no campfire to sit around. So they joined us, and they were with us. We also had a gentleman who came in to get warm because he was living in a tent locally. So we were supporting him on his journey back into housing. We had a gentleman who I believe is in his 80s who had recently lost his wife and was absolutely in the depths of his grief and didn't have anybody. He was very isolated. And we had a group of amazing young people from a local space that were dealing with some alternative provision offers. And it was really, really rich. It was a really beautiful group. We had some absolutely amazing feedback. But the beauty was we didn't have any expensive tools. We didn't have anything to use. We had pieces of paper and we had crayons and marker pens. I thought this is a great opportunity to do some mapping. Let's find out how we can work together, very different people, and see what's going on. And we did a mapping session, and it was just incredible to see the sense of purpose and identity that could come out of such a simple tool, with people recognizing, actually, I'm in a swamp here. There's nothing but swamp. All I have is a swamp. I can't even see where my rivers might be, and I haven't got any mountains to climb because there isn't anything else. And other people in the room who were feeling their own struggles could recognize, well, actually, I have a tool here that I might be able to bring to your campfire. And maybe I have something of value to add in. And it just, by the end of the session, it created this sense of hope and this sense of that there was something that we could do together as a collective. So it was really, really powerful. And I've kept those maps, and I'll put them in a slideshow and I'll share them. But it was just a really, really just a nice sort of different way of using mapping in different communities. So yeah, thank you very much for that, for jumping on the poll there. So we do have a nice little combination, really, of teachers and professionals and parents and business owners, which is lovely. And we have we have a student as well. So I'm going to share the results there, so so you can all have a little look. That should be able to be sharing up there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just attempt to share one more video. It's 2 minutes long. I'm going to share that. Again, it's from Anthony and his incredible work. And then while I check the chat box, and then we will have a little look and head into a bit of a Q&A session. So let me stop sharing that. And you know what? You can tell we've got teachers in the room because the timing there, guys, was just meticulous. Some of the Zooms that I host, it's like herding cats. So it was just beautiful, beautiful transitions. Right, let's see if we can get this video on. This is where I, potentially ruin the whole flow here by getting this bit wrong. Let's have a look. Right, let's head over to the chat then, and let's see if we have some questions that we can answer. Let's have a look. So yes, thank you. So, well, we've got some lovely comments. Brilliant. I know there were some questions that came up about cost, which Elvin, I think one was specific for you. I'm assuming that's in progress, and I'm going to be sharing a link to a Microsoft form shortly for you to pop your expression of interest in, and then the team will be able to get back to you with how it all works. So that will be answered. Let's see what we got. So yeah, I'm just noticing there, Elizabeth, there, lack of physical presence really hinders engagement and participation. I feel I have the same thing with with not even being in a school setting. How do you get to people with high anxiety levels? So yeah.
Can I answer that slightly? What I think I've found absolutely amazing is actually doing it online. It really does seem to work, which is something that Doutzen and myself have been quite amazed by, the depth. People seem to, when they're sitting at home, they can in fact draw amazing maps, and it just seems to put them sort of more relaxed at home. Right, Doutzen? I mean, it's been amazing seeing how people just seem to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's as if it adds a level of safety as well, to be in the comfort of the home and share it with a bit of distance to others. So it's really powerful as well.
Yeah.
Anthony, can I add a little comment too? I mean, one of the things that we learned through pandemic in schools, in fact, in a local school that I work in, like Jane, I've been governor and but working with schools at a deep level in terms of delivery, we found that some of the school phobic, challenging, mental health that challenged children that were finding classroom activity quite difficult actually found the engagement online completely different. It was a safer environment for them. They were in a comfortable space. We saw engagement in education during that period massively increase. So it may be that it can be seen as a very positive tool to actually increase engagement. And we've been working alongside some other organizations that are doing that within schools. So, replacing alternative provision with online provision. There's a lot of companies that are offering like EdClass and others that are doing similar work. So actually the opportunity for building confidence, for growing inner strength is really powerful in the online position. So because they find the kind of classroom experience and that socialization so challenging as the first step. So actually building their mental resilience with sort of planning and thinking skills, and then seeing that, well, how can I then transition into a social environment, is actually really powerful. So don't see it as a negative. It's actually a very powerful tool to step that way forward. So I think there's some real opportunities with learners in the age range that you're talking about.
But also with teachers, I found it fascinating. I'm thinking of the 5 sessions we ran with John Rolfe from St. Clair's. He was organizing it. We had about 15 or 20 teachers online each, and the maps they drew from around the world as part of their IB development. It is very surprising, and I think that is something that has surprised us. As Doutzen says, the security of their own home actually isn't quite as much as an issue as one would have thought it was.
Yeah, absolutely. Just spotting in the chat now, we've got a question from Elizabeth around being able to share some resources with the department. So I guess that will be a question that will come up, particularly when people are watching the recording as well, around next steps and any resources to share. And I'm gonna pop the link in probably in about 5 minutes for you to express your interest. So feel free to jot your details down, and then we're going to get back to you with some next steps. And like we said before, we've touched on it a couple of times. It's around co-creation. So we don't have all of the answers at this point, but we have some incredible people in the room that want to look at discussing the level of need and where the unmet needs are, and to co-create something really, really impactful and powerful. And that leads on to Mark's question. I think, Chris, you've answered that, but Mark Isherwood has posted some really lovely comments and posed the question around how do we bring this into communities? And how do we look at bringing it out into wider society and influencing government, looking at supporting parents and carers? And I don't know whether anybody else on the panel wants to kind of field that or add anything in, but I would say that the tool is so universal. It has to start with education. It has to start there, I believe, but we can really roll this out into community settings and into other groups and organisations to be able to get those communication lines open, I think.
And I'm add to that as well, Jane. I think there's a cohort as well that I work with, they're high performance individuals within sport, within various backgrounds. And I can see this really working well with them. I've started to talk about it with some of the individuals, but I can see that because there's different pressures at different areas in their lives and their careers, and I can really see this working well. And I'll let you know once we've done a couple of territory mappings with some of them, and there's a few in elite sport that I think it'd be good to try them. Try to see where those map the barriers and the challenges they face.
It's the beauty of metaphor, isn't it? And as I say, I've used it with so many people from completely different backgrounds, and I'm keen to test this out with my own family. So I know that my kids will probably be watching the recording of this. So brace yourself, kids, because I think it will be a really good thing for us to test out as a family. Just with that dynamic on how we communicate and how, you know, we understand each other. And because even within one family unit, it's similar within a school unit, isn't it? We have such different things going on. We're all going to have different territory maps in one space and in one unit, but we'll also have a collective one. And I just think it's a really great tool to explore in various areas. Vanessa, you just mentioned about CPD. That'd be great. It's a great route in with the work that you're doing. Incredible work. And Vanessa has an actual campfire, so I spend a lot of my time building these physical spaces around a real campfire. So it will be great to do some in-person mapping sessions where we can bring people to the beautiful Welsh woodland to bring those metaphors to life. I just got a message as well. I'm going to read that. Sorry, let's hand back over. Was that you, Chris?
No, Elfyn, let Elfyn go first, and
Okay.
I'll step in.
I just wanted to add to that really, because I think the mapping's being used really well with students, teachers, parents when they have problems that they're facing. But sometimes we use it when we're faced with problems. What we need to do is maybe introduce it at a much youngest age and break it down into sections. So really teaching people about the value of trust, the value of community. Not our own community, but the other communities around the world as well. The world's already a small place now, so we should be connecting a lot more. And it's sad to see that some communities are still struggling in the world. So what we found as well was by embedding sustainability into the curriculum, it made everyone aware about sustainability, and it made everyone aware about the problems, not just within Dubai, but across the whole world, really. And then what we saw as the students moved through that over 4 or 5 years, they were still talking about this kind of mindset, and they were in a different mindset when they were much older as well. So that's why we do really believe that if we can implement this at year 5 and 6, students will not just use mapping to help them, but they'll use it as a habit, become a habit and a way of life. Yeah. Where they can really just use it as to plan anything with.
Sonia, yeah, I've worked with Sonia and her teachers. Would you like to say a couple of words, Sonia, please? You're muted.
Sorry, I really just enjoyed what Elfyn just said, because that's something I was just starting to pick up on. Was to say not to wait till there are problems to use territory mapping, because as Elfyn said, I think it's something that can be brought right down to kindergarten children, that they actually start using it and build skills all through school. So for me, it's not just for students or for teachers later on. It should be used right from the start, because it's a fantastic way to develop those empathy and community skills very early on. Not those metaphors are just wonderful to actually encourage the children to notice their community, to realize what the communication skills are within that community, and to take ownership and responsibility for their own communication. And I saw that first part of the video, Jane, you had the bits with the phone, looking down. I mean, that's obviously happens more around 12 years old onwards. If they already have the community skills before that, they will be less affected and will learn how to responsibly use data and social media onwards. We mustn't wait till social media takes over and then we come in with territory mapping. It's actually the other way around. We should have the territory mapping to prepare them so that they can use responsibly all and be prepared for the world of tomorrow.
Absolutely, Sonia. I'm so glad you said that. And you know, my biggest passion is to make myself redundant. The early intervention has to be the way forward. We don't want to have to use this in a therapeutic sense, as Chris said. I don't want to be using it in it for trauma recovery. We want to use it for that earliest possible intervention to build those skills in, so that people can learn, you know, who's around their campfire and what they need and who they are and what their identity is and where they're going. It's the earlier the better, I think. But we definitely need to start with the resources and the communities that we've got, and then, you know, co-create. That's the power, isn't it? Being able to do that. And thank you as well, Zoe, for the brilliant comment there. It's lovely to see such great comments coming through. It shows we're in the right direction. Chris, I'm going to come to you in just 1 second. I've popped in the form there. If you want to click on it, you don't need to fill it in now, although you can do. But if you've got it on your desktop, it'll be there when we leave. And I've also popped a Word document in, which has all the contact details for everyone that's been speaking today in the order that we've appeared. So I've just popped them down in just so that you know who was who. Chris?
Just on that, a couple of the questions that have been asked. So one, Mark makes a great point about, you know, so reaching out to other organisations. I think that's where some of the questions are coming from. That I've talked to Jane recently on a podcast about behaviour matches what we measure, and we become what we measure. And that sense of where have we got our priorities in the education system? It's so much on what grades did you get, rather than what are you capable of doing and where are your skills and attributes. So much of what this is about is really exactly, Sonia, as you're saying, build the skills early, get those things deep into our understanding. And, you know, I genuinely believe in an education system that brings success for all. I've actually said to Jane the other day, you know, if our education system ends with a failure, then the system has failed, because every child deserves success. Every person deserves success in it. But there's a message to get out there, because that's actually subversive to what the government would want to validate the education system by. But I think there are some routes where we could get this message out there. And I guess that's the co-creation part of what James just said. You know, we need to see, or we need some links to be able to get those messages out. So whether that's through the media or whether that's through some other routes, be really interesting to see this a much more high profile conversation. So your links, your ability to say, well, can you come and talk to X, Y, and Z? Then, you know, we're certainly up for that conversation, because I think it's a powerful message to move forward with, and it is truly a global question. You know, actually seeing Emmanuel Mankura stand, you know, on a screen in a classroom in Norfolk in England, and actually watch the head teacher and the senior team in tears as they see the opportunity that their children have now had with 200 sixth formers is quite awe-inspiring. And they're just picking up on Mark's other point. Yes, it's been done with primaries, and that's the point. It's all the way through. We've got to build these skills early, but we need to see it not just as another subject, as a bedrock skill.
Chris, if I can just add one thing that I'm very excited about. With Sonia, well, I actually went over there a couple of years ago and ran it for the teachers. And it was absolutely fabulous, the energy that came out of it and the sort of the free things that came out. How do we educate the parents of the children that education is so much more than exams? How do we feel really, really proud of our non-academic or non-academic activities? And, you know, how do we educate the children that life is just so much wider? And how do we do it? And these fundamentalists, it just creates a plan that makes everybody feel proud. And I think that's what every teacher wants. What are we all hunting? We're hunting love and affection. That's all we want. And once people can work that out, that it's a challenging lifetime journey, it can give people, how do we protect our family? How do we grow? And I think, Valerie, I mean, you with your daughter, with Jude, you found the mapping really interesting, didn't you?
Yeah, it was lovely because in Kenya, Doutzen had asked my daughter if she'd like to do it. Well, I asked her and she said no. And then Doutzen asked her and she was like, yeah. And I don't even know if Doutzen knows this, but like my daughter was like, what to do? She was saying to me, and then he went off into a nice space. Actually, you invited the three of us, my husband, to join as well. And it was just lovely seeing my daughter just kind of getting started and then really dropping into a nice place where you could see she was thinking and she was creating, and she'd never she'd never done something like that before. People will ask her, you know, what does she want to be when she's older? She's very used to that question, but actually sitting down in Kenya and having spent wonderful time with the Maasai, just really thinking about her life and where she is and where she wants to be. I mean, she said it was the most amazing experience she's ever had, and the happiest she's ever been, just because of the lovely, gentle insights that she got from it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just to add on to that, Valerie, because I can really see that from bringing sort of neuroscience into the room, just the ability to have permission to be creative and to get into a safe space to be able to explore sometimes quite challenging topics. It just, you know, and those of you in the room that are in the know, obviously, it just allows that part of the brain to light up, and everything just becomes a completely different landscape, if you pardon the pun. So in terms of learning and being able to learn, and as Chris mentioned, what we're measuring, what are we measuring? That has to be the question. For me, we're measuring the wrong things, absolutely. But it is what it is, and we have to operate in the system as it is at the moment. But if we can help people to expand and explore things by supporting their resilience and their mental health and their brain in general, then we're more likely to attain the targets and the results that we're striving for, rather than shutting everybody down and creating this environment of high pressure and stress, which, you know, isn't conducive to learning. So just being able to be creative and light up those parts of the brain is beautiful. And if we can do it in a setting that isn't clinical and isn't classroom based, sometimes that really does help as well. I love being, you know, in spaces in schools, but I also love being able to take this out on the road. I think Rex and Sonia, and there's a few people that have mentioned the importance of balancing, like Alvin said, not just tech. We need to be able to have the two, and we have to blend that. We can't go backwards, and we can't ignore it, and we can't not use it. We have to engage young people in the way that they want to engage and the way they're used to engaging. But we have to have that fine balance, don't we, of keeping ourselves grounded in the real world and in our spaces.
For me, this is like an acupuncture point. This is something that you can really gently bring it in and allow something to happen that will then impact the whole of the person and the system. I do see this as a real acupuncture point.
Completely agree. Sonia, I wasn't paying attention. My bad. Apologies. I don't know whether Elvin or Sonia had hands up first, but I'm just going with Sonia because I can see you first. Apologies, Elvin, if it was you.
No worries. I just wanted to pick up something that Chris said, which I thought was really, really important for all those that are teachers here, is the fact that the program needs to be embedded across the whole of the school and not as a separate curriculum. And I think that is that is a little bit the danger with schools or as teachers, who we sort of see things, oh no, not another curriculum, oh no, not another program, oh help, I have to do something else. And I think Anthony noticed that in our school there was a bit of that too, you know, that sort of panic, oh, do I have to do something else on top of all the exams and the preparations and the grades? And you know, we have big exams in Switzerland where the children have to always aim towards. And I think that what Elvin, what you've done is just amazing. And I'd like a huge thank you to you for everything you've taken Anthony's genie and has put it there in absolutely fabulous imagery. And I think that this is exactly the point to focus on as teachers. As a year ago, I did a research to try to understand where the children were seeing empathy, community, and leadership, right down to kindergarten children. And we did it through drawings. And it was quite, I mean, I knew it was going to happen a bit, but I was shocked at how many stereotypes were already with small 5-year-olds in terms of where they saw leadership, where they saw empathy in a community or community skills. The stereotypes that are coming from Disney, the stereotypes that are coming from their parents, from what they think are businesses, what they think are leaders. I mean, we had 8-year-olds drawing factories with themselves on the right-hand side of the picture at the top with a sofa and a desk and all their workers at the bottom of the picture. I mean, that dissociation between what real leadership is and that already 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds. So I think that what you're bringing here with this website, Elvin, and this putting, you know, this imagery instead of stereotypes, to encourage the children right from kindergarten age to think about their own role, their rivers, the mammoth, the mountains. It's going to help to break down those stereotypes that are coming from other areas. And I think that if teachers understand that that can go across all subjects and not just as a curriculum in itself, there's wonderful future ahead.
Thanks, Sonia. Thank you very much. Elfyn.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. That's exactly what I wanted to say, really. I just wanted to add a couple of things. Just so if we look at technology, and I know there's a few questions there about technology and making sure that the balance is there. We shouldn't be taking technology away because it's here to stay. What we should be doing is teaching students how to use it. And a lot of schools are bringing in guest speakers to talk about cybersecurity, for example, AI. But what we should be doing is creating something that allows students to explore these themselves and for us to teach them how to use these tools correctly. So if we're looking at what are we protecting, so teaching students to protect their own passwords, what's the importance of cybersecurity? There's a lot of fake profiles on the internet now, fake influencers as well. So who and where and how do these people fit into our communities? Should they be in our community at all? And then we've got things like fake news. How do we look at what's fake and what's real? How do we tell the difference? And how can we analyze that? And through mapping, it's something that we can easily do. So I think, yeah, the integrated approach to the curriculum is where we see these cards fit in. And hopefully people will use them throughout their lessons just by throwing them out at random as well. So every lesson becomes different because there's a different skill taught in every lesson as well, which will hopefully increase students' confidence then to speak about these topics as well.
Absolutely. Brilliant. Thank you, Elfyn. Now, I know we've run over by 4 minutes. My timekeeping is shocking, isn't it? You can tell I'm not a teacher. But I'm just going to let Anthony just wrap up with a couple of final words, and then we're going to stop the official part of the webinar. Feel free to hop off, and I will send you the recording and all the documents. If you want to stay on, some of us are going to stay on until around about 4:30 if you want to keep on chatting, but there's no need to. Anthony, a few final words from you.
Well, I think it's final words really from everybody. It's thank you. It's really how an idea can grow, how a passion can grow. I mean, this is something I've been working on for, 40, 50 years. And, I've still got as much energy as I have. We haven't got the answer. We have no idea. And when we see how people can take this, grow it, working with Doutzen, working with Elfyn, working with everybody. I mean, Jane has just said, yes, and I've now done it in the forest and I've done it here. Watch this video. It's just so exciting seeing it come out of people. It gives them a sense of, as I say, the power of their personality. They feel they're being listened to. They have control of their destiny. They've got that life experience. They've crossed those rivers. They've climbed those mountains. They've achieved things that they never really valued in the past. And, they can contribute, they can help, they can support. And I think these are the fundamentals that we always used to have. And we've just sort of forgotten it. But it's difficult to bring it out in this environment. But I think we can. And a final thing that amazed me, when I did 1,000 maps at Nord Anglia School in Dubai, not one of them had social media on their maps. And that's what I found fascinating. It was all they could draw their rivers and their mountains, but no social media. But thank you all very, very much. Everybody on the panel, thank you so much. And, this is the beginning of the adventure. We haven't got the answers. We're just going to go playfully forward. And hopefully there are people here who will be on that journey and be looking back over the next 50 years.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you very much, Anthony. Thank you to the panel. Thank you for everybody for joining us. I'm going to pop the form in the chat one more time. And then, as I say, feel free to jump off. A few of us are going to just hang on and stay on in case anybody needs us for anything. But thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you all very, very much. Rex,
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if anybody'd like to sort of make any comments or any thoughts, we'd love to hear it. Daniel, hope to see you next week.
Thank you, Anthony. Very, very informative presentation. I'm looking forward to meeting you next week.
Yeah.
Hopefully some of the team in the future as well.
Yeah. Looking forward to that very much indeed. Yeah, Rachel and Lewis, you've been listening to me over the years. How have you found it? Lois, you met us maybe about 15, 20 years ago. Is Lois there? Oh, well.
Anthony, I just had a question whether you ever managed to track one of the maps that you've done with one of your maybe former students or one of the companies and track it through time.
Oh, God, yeah.
See the actual impact on whether the original map transpired or how did it change along the way.
I've crossed the river. I've established my camp. I've got lots of those stories and that. And I think it's trying to give people, experiences. And I just find it fascinating that 29 years later than Bill Gates being on the Great Wall and flying his kite, he still remembers it as something that makes him feel proud. And, I think, giving people the map, I have crossed that river. I can lead people. I feel worthy. And you can see it, and people do. And I think, Jane, you've had people cross the rivers and you've got lots of lovely examples, haven't you?
Yeah, I'll pop them in a slideshow and I'll send them over, because I think I probably got that kind of reference point because I use it as a therapeutic tool. So I use it specifically to assess where people are when I first come across them, and then we'll periodically redo the maps to work out where we're at and how are we doing with that swamp and how's the river looking. Do we need to build a raft? Are we sinking? And that kind of thing. But on a personal note, since the very first session with Anthony and Wrexham a few years ago, I've been doing my personal map, and it's been a huge game changer for me in my personal and my professional life. And I try and do one quarterly, but at least twice a year I will do a map, and I can see the journey and the progression from my first one to the one that I've recently completed. Massive difference. So it's just, I think everybody should do, and everybody should be using this for sure. Really powerful.
It's really, really interesting looking at the students' approach to it versus say some of the stories that Valerie shared, and how it's so different across the board from the youth to the educated, and how it changes through time.
Yeah, and I think I was speaking to Anthony about this a while ago. I have very different results because of the demographics that I work with. And I know in leadership circles, I think, and in schools, you would be looking at the goal setting first and then drilling it back to where are the challenges. A lot of the communities that I work with, we have to start with the swamp, because there's no accessing any thought around any progression at that point. It's just, I'm in a swamp and I can't see anything else. So we start what tends to be, I feel, the other way around, and we'll get it out in the open. What's going on? Where's the swamp? And from then we start to build tools to start to look a little bit further out.
I'm going to come in here. I also work as an executive coach with school leaders, and I use it in one-to-one coaching. And I have to thank Doughton again, because Doughton has put so much work into territory mapping, and we've had conversations about using it in coaching. But it's a phenomenal tool on a one-to-one basis to get people to actually stop and think about where they are themselves. And sometimes people will say, am I mapping my own journey? Am I mapping the school territory? And even that is a question in itself. That's a great place to start. Okay, well, what's really important to you just now? Which one? Because you can do both. But I just wanted to share that about the one-to-one coaching as well. Doughton.
Yeah, thanks. Again, Anthony, I think I want to say how brilliant you are. Though, what I think draws many people to you, no matter what age, is the kind of questions you ask. And even if it is to young people about who do you really want to be, those are questions that I think I've never gotten in my life. And I think so many of you touched on things that I feel fit so well to a chapter I read a few days ago. I'm studying the Gene Keys, for those of you who are familiar with it. It's a beautiful collection of wisdom about the mechanics of self-awareness and consciousness, and also on an individual level, but also humanity. And it speaks quite a lot about education. And there's a chapter that it says, when you look at the world in which we live today, especially the Western world, it is quite extraordinary how many people live such similar lives. Your individuality is imprinted very early in life. One of the issues addressed repeatedly throughout the book is the influence of modern education, especially in the years leading up to the age of 7. Most educational systems encourage sameness rather than difference, because difference threatens the system itself. By setting up a system where sameness is the rule, we have successfully turned individuals into outsiders and reactionaries. And what it leads to is that we compromise our dreams, not because we fear we will fail, but because we know that to succeed, we will have to rebel against the whole of society and its expectations of us. So we fear what we might become because we don't know who we are. And I think the questions that you always ask, Anthony, because you went a path that was different, and you believe in people to do what they have in their hearts, and you encourage that. I think that a big part of the power is in that, because people feel that. And I think this tool is, in that sense, a bit of a bridge, because it lets us think about who we really want to be. And not only think about it, but then you can draw that map and actually find a way. So just listening to all of you about already how young children have been indoctrinated, what you shared, Sonia, I think this can maybe do even much more than I thought it would. So I just wanted to share those pages of that.
I completely agree, Doutzen. I think it is we're just scratching the surface, aren't we? It's really incredible. I've just got someone in the chat now, Jason. If you want to unmute, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my name's Jason and I'm based in Crawley, West Sussex. I met Anthony last week and it was a very, very interesting presentation that he gave. I'm a mentor for young men that are in the criminal justice system. So some of them are coming out of prison, some very, very serious criminals. And what we do is, I like this concept of that fire, because we have we always keep a fire in the center of our meetings, in the circle, or a small flame. And it's a warm place to be, where you share your stories, you develop your ideas. And the way of forming that circle is a circle of equality, where every person has an equality between us all. And so even people that, so we have certain processes that we work through. I don't want to talk too much, but so I've mentored some people that have been in prison or in and out of prison since they were 14 years old, had the reputation of being the most violent men. But then we've really changed their life through this type of mentorship work that we do. And I've also noticed, I've been in contact with some local schools, and they've talked about how the children are running just completely out of control. And so we want to try and arrange some meetings with them, with the school, and have their parents there as well, because quite often the parents are continuing the same pattern and they're given the same upbringing to their own children. So it's intergenerational. And the way that when I went to school, the teaching was pretty bad as it was at the time. There was no sort of inspiration in the way they told the stories, nothing to hold on to. And we talk about mapping the territory, and that we own this territory. Both of my parents came from abroad to the UK, but the idea of belonging to the land gives you the respect for it. So you won't throw rubbish on the floor, because the education system comes from a very, very basic beginning of not throwing rubbish on the floor, respect the land, what sort of damage it would do, and things like that. So I'm very interested in using this work and approaching some of the schools and see if we can incorporate it in some sort of workshop or something like that. And so perhaps we can discuss this outside of this meeting in some way.
Yeah, brilliant, Jason. Very similar work to me. I've done a lot of work with prison leavers, and thank you, Valerie. Thank you so much. And it's so powerful. I can tell from experience working with people who have significant challenges. I've done this technique with several prison leavers with brilliant outcomes. So I think it relates back to somebody else's comment a little while back in the chat around how do we get people trained up. And I think, Anthony, that's a conversation for you and Doutzen and the team moving forward, because I think the purpose of today was around education and schools and how we can bring this into the curriculum. But again, community settings and spaces like you're working in, Jason, similar to what I do. I think if we can empower people with the training and the tools to go out into their spaces, into their organizations, to use it, I think it's going to be so powerful. So we'll definitely, I think, facilitate that conversation after today. So brilliant work as well.
Oh, thank you for that. Can I just add one more point? So the idea is once you've created that circle, you make them the leaders of the circles themselves. So they might not know they have the ability, but to build that self-esteem up amongst their own parents. So yeah, thank you for the time.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jason.
You'll love
Rex.
Jane. Please, Rex.
Hi, Jane, Anthony. What a great session. I think the introduction for myself was not the typical educator, but, being a physician, I guess I did teach both students and residents and so forth. I'm actually responding to what Jason is saying. What's interesting is, so in looking at the Maasai, or I was in Laos and Sri Lanka recently, and there, of course, are the novice monks, 8 or 10-year-old walking around in saffron robe, doing the alms and so forth. I think the issue is one of, and Jason was pointing out about the very violent upbringing of a number of what we call offenders with is it the wrong, using a pejorative upbringing, but it's a certain amount of initiation, and each culture's initiation is all quite different, what the Maasai goes through versus what the novice monks go through. And we have to think about, it's all very well to, in the beginning, say we build a global community. I think the needs of each community is quite very different, and we have to recognize the differences in culture and all types of culture. Mine comes from a very tiger mom, tiger dad, exactly what Doughton was speaking against, that many people do things with a wrong external motivation rather than finding our own true internal motivations. So it's a much bigger dialogue of saying the gangs of all the different cities and so forth, they have an initiation right. It's just the wrong ones, right? Break into cars or even drawing blood and so on and so forth. So I think it's quite an interesting thought going forward, how to build a right mapping. And the maps we choose have different elements, obviously, depending on whether you're Samic people versus if you're the Aboriginals in Australia and the Kenyans, Maasai, they're all very different components. So I'm just saying, I think we need to really personalize much more our thoughts.
Yeah, I completely agree. And again, I think I bring it back to the fact that and it's down to the way you facilitate, I guess. And I've had this conversation a few times. You can have a standardized approach where you have a tool and it's used and that's it. This is the blueprint. This is the checkbox. That's how we do it. Or you can use it in a very person-centered and strengths-based way. And you can nuance it and you can change it around depending on the group that you're working with. That's how I like to use it. So I think in terms of teaching people, that would be great to be able to build those skills with teachers and trainers and community leaders, how to adapt that tool to very different cross sections of the community. And I'd like to, I know Joanne made a really good comment in the chat as well, and it echoes what Jason was saying, that the pinch point of high school, which kind of brings it back to education, of the transition up to high school, where it seems to be a really difficult part of life for teachers and for students. And you mentioned, Jason, kids running riot. I usually get them, the naughty kids that we know aren't really naughty, and there's just so many because it's the system that's wrong and not the person. So I think it is something to explore, isn't it? How, when, and where do we use this tool, and how do we train people to use it effectively?
I think the high school part again points to the fact that we all went through our beginning youth of having this sense of what is the deep hidden meaning behind life. We're beginning to ask questions. And very often when we look at different cultures, and leaving aside the religious aspect of bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah of the Jewish or the Aboriginals going out into walking the bush, and the same with the Maasai, there are certain ages that's very critical in our sense of developing an identity, and the balance between being guided by a community with the right support versus being pushed into the wrong groups or different groups with different subcultures. I think the high school is not just because the hormones, well, partly it's the hormones rearing up, but it's many different factors. When we are time to be pushed out of the nest, we feel that ourselves. And it's equally bad if they don't habituate in a certain way. It's about how we can provide the right community support and guidance.
Beautifully put, Rex. Yeah, beautiful. I quite agree. Anybody else would like to add anything or any other questions?
Right. Alice has got a question that she'd like to ask.
Go ahead, Alice. Hello, Alice. Oh, I think it was it in the chat, Anthony?
Yeah.
I think it's Vanessa and Alice chatting. I know both Vanessa and Alice.
Oh, okay, fine. Yeah.
Alice is just freaked out and gone, what? I'm not a dead.
Don't scare me, don't scare me. No, yeah, brilliant technique. So definitely.
Yeah.
Something we can use. Yeah, I wish I'd had it a few years ago, Alice, working with your team with the NEET a few years ago. It would have been a game changer, I think, with communication. Something we can explore for sure.
Definitely get lots more information and I will give it a trial.
Brilliant, thank you. Well, I just a sort of a final one. I'll never forget doing it in Greenwich at a fairly deprived school there, moving from primary to secondary school. And what was interesting, we had new teachers and new students, and some of the students had been in the school for quite a long time, drew their maps of how it was familiar. But what was very funny on the new students, they were very, very, very diverse backgrounds. But once they realized Tesco was at the center of their world and their sister's bedroom was a place of extreme danger, then there was immediate commonality of conversation. So I think, you know, why do I love doing mapping sort of 30 years on after I first started? It's because every single time you do it, you see something different. You see a different metaphor, a different expression, a different smile, a different wow. And it really is, it's extraordinary. And I think we can give people those memories that was Doutzen was saying, that they can think about things for the first time in their lives. They can take them home to their parents and they can say, so what was your river? How did you overcome it? What did you feel when you were our age? And I think this is how it will evolve, and we have no idea how it'll be. And, you know, Jason, I can't wait. I've done it in prison once, but, you know, if we could really start impacting people, and surely they can then be the teachers to the students. We've done some at Glasgow Academy, and what was interesting there was that they had 1 year group, then teaching the next year group and teaching the next year group. Well, that hasn't been done as systematic as it could have been, but I know they've done it from 1 year to the other, from one class to the other. And therefore the students who are teaching have the relevance and they can grow with it. So I just think there are so many different ways that we can play with it. And
yeah. What a great way to put it. And I think that's a beautiful place to finish. I think that's a great way to finish. And we've got lots more to come and lots more that we can explore. So make sure you get your contact details in if you're interested in a conversation. And I think we can have an early bell, an early finish, 5 minutes, because we've all been so well behaved in class today. So I'm going to suggest that we finish there, and I'm going to end the meeting and thank you once again, everybody, to the speakers and to everybody who's hung on till the bitter end. Much appreciated. And we will speak to you very soon.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.